Hello everybody, I hope you're doing well. Just want to say it right off the cuff, I'm definitely going to have purple lip gloss in my teeth at some point, so if we could just move past that and pretend that that doesn't happen. I'll try to catch it if and when it does. If I am caught slacking, then let's just pretend I don't have any on my teeth. Maybe we could try that. So I'm here to talk about the movies that I watched during the last couple of months of the year, starting from July, August, and of course September. So July, I'm gonna whiz past the first thing that I watched because I already talked about it excitedly in my last movie wrap up, because I was ecstatic to talk about it, and that was Kpop Demon Hunters. If you want to hear a little bit more about my thoughts on that movie, definitely check out my last movie wrap up. Going into the next movie that I actually am going to discuss here, it is Before I Go to Sleep, which I gave a 3 out of 5 stars, and I got more than I was expecting with this one. It follows Christine, who wakes up every morning with no memories of past events in her life. However, when she discovers a terrifying truth about herself, she is forced to question everyone around her. With any amnesia themed media, not that I've watched a lot of them, I presume you're going to get a lot of repetition, and that's definitely what we got here. But it was more like as we were building into the story, you know, the main character's routine, remembering like at least yesterday, having a voice recorder or something like that, you know, a diary, something like that, and it's going to be a bit of a slog to get through until we get into the meat and potatoes of the movie. It does lead to a slow start, especially considering, you know, we've got a thriller. This is a thriller movie, if you didn't know that. But I do think the more edgy elements of this particular movie was definitely caught my attention earlier on than I was expecting it to, and I was ever curious as to who was telling the truth. I do like a kind of unreliable narrator when I have dived into it. Off the top of my head, I can think of like The Girl on the Train. When I read that book, I really enjoyed that aspect of it, not knowing like if our main character is remembering things accurately, correctly, all that sort of stuff, and that's an element that I enjoyed in this movie. But yeah, it was pretty pacey, pretty thrilling, and although it had a slow start with the repetition, it was an enjoyable movie. I watched a documentary. This is Leaving Neverland 2, Surviving Michael Jackson, and I wasn't honestly ever expecting a follow-up to the original one, which I want to say came out before the pandemic. Was it 2018, 2019? Yeah, just a little commentary on this really. It just showed how frustratingly long the process of the court system is. I think that's the main takeaway really, like these people that are trying to get justice for what they've said has happened are still trying to get their justice, you know. On to something a little bit more light-hearted, I guess you could say. It was Predator, Killer of Killers, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. We've got a Viking raider, a ninja in feudal Japan, and a World War II pilot who encounter a fierce intergalactic hunter, and of course their stories intertwine. I wasn't too sure how everything was going to connect, especially as the movie itself started to feel like very episodic and as if there were 3 separate episodes, and probably didn't help that that's how I watched it. You know, I watched pretty much when the Viking saga ended. I didn't continue. I waited to the next day that I was around to watch the next part, so it did feel very episodic in that way. But about halfway, everything just synced up and it made sense. I don't know which individual story I liked the most out of the 3 main characters that we do follow, but they do work really well on their own as well as together. And I think even though it feels like these are really disjointed and not connected at all, just push through, because when they do click, it is really satisfying. I ended up giving that one a 4 out of 5 stars. Next up, I watched Push, which I gave a 2.5 out of 5 stars. We are following Cassie and Nick, who have inhuman superpowers. They must race to find a girl in Hong Kong before a shadowy government organisation called Division gets there before they do. I remember wanting to watch this when it came out originally, and honestly just forgetting about it until now. It was a decent film, I would say, a little subpar, but an interesting plot with a refreshing take on the superhuman genre. I will say I'm not surprised that it didn't get a sequel though, because it was just okay. On to August now. I only watched one movie during that time, and that was The Living Dead Girl, which I gave a 1 out of 5 stars. It was a pleasantly surprising sapphic love story about a zombie who is more akin to a vampire, I would say. Page in the Village, and yeah, it was just dry with little to no plot, unfortunately. Oh, I don't know why I thought I only watched one movie. I watched 3 movies in August. The next one being Selkie, which I gave 2 stars, so you know, a little bit better than the prior movie. This one follows Jamie, who moves with his family to a remote island off of Australia. He discovers that he is connected with an ancient people from Scotland. I love magical folklore, and that's what this story is at its heart. It was a bit too cringe. The main character was super irritating, like Jamie was infuriating. He just always seemed to be pissed off at people for no reason, and I was like, dude, chill, it's really not that deep. It was entertaining and it was a chill movie, but not super solid in the storytelling, unfortunately. Quick little breakaway. Have you guys tried this pear Fanta? Like, I saw it in the shop today and I was like, that sounds amazing, and honestly it tastes amazing too. I got another one which had Chucky on the front, and it's like raspberry or something like that, raspberry crush, but I haven't tried that one yet. This one was calling to me and it is so refreshing and crisp. Okay, next up, I watched Heretic, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. We are following 2 young missionaries becoming ensnared in a deadly game of cat and mouse when they knock on the door of the diabolical Mr. Reed. Trapped in his home, they must turn to their faith if they want to make it out alive. This was a very slow burn, eerie kind of film full of psychological and intellectually stimulating horror on the topic of religion, which I found absolutely fascinating. The movie creeps along at a chilling pace. It's fueled by its unsettling atmosphere. It's interesting how vulnerable our main characters feel, and fear that amps up, especially as Mr. Reed doesn't like encroach on their personal space or physically harm them until like the final third of the movie, where the plot really amps up and the pace gets thrilling, yet all of the tension and the atmosphere of it just feels so like invading of your personal space, right? And I thought that was such a really well done piece of acting. This was profoundly thought-provoking, and I think throughout the whole thing it had me literally on the edge of my seat, so definitely recommend this movie if you haven't yet already watched it. Moving on to September now, the first movie that I rolled into the month with was Five Nights at Freddy's, which I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. I remember watching gameplay of the game when the third franchise first started like coming out and being terrified, but I never once played it myself, so I wasn't super anticipating this movie, and that's why I wasn't really like fussed about watching it until I just saw it and I was like, you know what, let's give it a go. I did check it out when I saw it on Netflix, and yeah, it was really entertaining actually. It had more lore and storytelling, particularly with the creation of the animatronics, than I was expecting, and the themes and subgenre were more my kind of thing than I was expecting as well. Overall, it was a pretty decent movie and I'd recommend it. I then started my journey into the franchise of Indiana Jones. I don't know what has been, you know, knocking at my door to watch this, but it finally has pushed its way through. I started, of course, with Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, which I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. As I say, I've been itching to have a movie marathon of this series for like a couple of months now, and I can't really recall what set it off to begin with, but nevertheless, just when I was about to purchase to borrow it to watch it on Prime, I noticed that it had the available in 5 days, so you know, I vigilantly awaited it out until it was free to watch on Prime, and it was such a satisfying moment. Sure, I've seen some of the more iconic scenes here, there and everywhere, and some of the references, but I'm pretty sure this was actively like my first time sitting down and properly watching it, you know, with intention, being like, I'm gonna put this on and I'm gonna watch it, you know. And honestly, I had such a fun time. Don't get me wrong, it's definitely dated, cringe and the like, but it's full of adventure, fun battle scenes, and of course a little historical archaeological lore involving the backstory of the biblical Ark of the Covenant, which is the core subject of the movie, of course. Adding a little dash of rivalry between Jones and the Nazis, and my sudden realisation at who Aqua was singing about in the song Dr. Jones, and we were having a grand old time. Really not my natural go-to film, but I will say I feel more worldly after having consumed this movie. It just feels like such a classic, and yeah, I definitely was intending to continue on with the series of movies, and I did that immediately after with film 2, which was Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. This one I liked a little bit less. I gave it a 2.5 out of 5 stars. I am glad I watched the sequel, but I think my slight knock in enjoyment boiled down to two things. One, the female lead. I don't know what happened to our baddie of the first movie, who was actually likeable, alluring and capable. She was just gone. We had this new heroine and she was not it for me. I couldn't deal with her. She was absolutely infuriating. And two, the stereotypical depiction of the location and the blatant black, or I guess in this case brown face. Yeah, that was not it, and it was definitely a product of its time. Very dated feeling with this particular movie. Still fun, action-packed, entertaining, all of that, but just a little less engaging for me. I found myself like losing focus and interest quite a few times throughout the movie. I did watch it in 2 halves, and honestly probably wouldn't have been in too much of a rush to finish off the second half of the movie had I been watching it just on my own and not with my other half, and wasn't on a mission to get through the franchise. So I had a little goal in my head and I wanted to kind of get through it. Otherwise I probably would have just left the second half and gone straight to the third film. On to a documentary I feel like everybody's been talking about. I haven't got an awful lot to say about this, just want to add a little bit of my 2 piece into the conversation here. But it is Unknown Number, the high school catfish, and honestly this was bonkers. It recently came out on Netflix, and the reveal of who was behind these horrible, disgusting text messages to these young people, absolutely flawed, dismayed, distraught, disgusted. The text messages were vile and invasive, and honestly I'm still in shock at how someone could say these sort of vulgar things to a bunch of kids. And this person was happy to be in the documentary as well. Like, what on earth? I won't say any more, but just what on earth? I know the world has probably already watched this, but in case you haven't, please go ahead and do so. It's bonkers and it will infuriate you, but it's definitely worth the watch. After that I watched a new movie to Netflix, and this was The Thursday Murder Club, which I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. Originally the book by Richard Osman. This was just so lovely, which kind of sounds like a bit of a joke in consideration to the title, right? But it was super cozy, really well depicted, the book. I did read it ahead of the movie's release, but I knew I tend to prefer kind of watching cozy crime, cozy thriller, as opposed to like reading them a lot of the time, and that was the case here. I think Joyce is such a darling. The whole gang really just clicked, and it was so nice to see it visually on screen. I think the only thing that was a little bit off for me was Pierce Brosnan, and I've since spoken to colleagues and friends that have watched this and have read the book as well, and have also felt the same way. Like, him playing Ron just didn't quite work, didn't quite make sense for me. My colleague said it best. She was like, he's too suave for this sort of character, and I've got to agree 100% with her there. I watched it over like 3 nights, so I did really piece it out and split it over, so it was a bit of a pottering movie for me overall, but it was fun, it was enjoyable, and if and when they do come out with the other movies in the book series, I will probably watch them probably in the same way and just enjoy them like that. I don't think I'll be reading more of the books just because it's not really for me, but I did like the movie. It was just a wholesome, thrilling story. It had some excellent actors in it as well. After that I read Never Let Go, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. When an unspeakable evil takes over the world, the only protection for a mother and her twin sons is their house and their strong bond. This was a quiet, unfolding kind of movie, but it was filled with tense atmosphere and it was foreboding throughout. Even with daylight scenes, it just felt off, which was so well done. Like, it's not often that a daylight scene in a movie feels scary and eerie and just wrong and creepy, but this really set the tone and intention of the movie perfectly, because quite a lot of it was set during the daylight hours, I would say, and it just felt wrong, you know? The siblings dynamic was well explored, being both loving and a hint of that distrust, favouritism kind of brewing below the surface, leading to some spiteful actions that kind of set the course of the plot in motion. I'm still left wondering, was Mama, as she was referred to, suffering with poor mental health, and was it hereditary? Were the children so conditioned and so malnourished that they began hallucinating like similar things out there? Was there really an evil supernatural entity outside that only the house and the rope could protect them from? Or was it some kind of twisted combination of all of the above? The ending was really good. I could have done without seeing Kota running after them. If you know, you know. I wanted to cry. I'm still left with questions of what really happened in the woods, and honestly, I don't mind that. Usually I don't really like an open-ended kind of story, but this one I think worked out quite well. Okay, 3 more movies to talk about. So I also watched Blue Beetle, which I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. It was super cheesy to the point of actually being annoying a lot of the time, but I can't deny the emotional moments really hit hard for me, especially that last minute villain origin story. I'm a sucker for the baddies apparently. A fun movie overall, I would say, but a little bit too heavy on the comic relief when it wasn't necessary and kind of did itself a disservice. I then had a bit of a naff birthday itself, and the way I ended up celebrating in the end to kind of cheer myself up was ordering Wagamamas and watching the next Star Wars that I had to watch. And for me, that was Star Wars 4: A New Hope, which I gave a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I had previously watched what I guess were like the prequels, so the later movies first, so 1, 2 and 3. And I know some people, well, most people would have watched from movie 4 onwards first and then go back, right? But I thought it was really cool to see how the story was first introduced before the newer ones, technically, in the beginning of the story, and seeing the timeline all kind of weave together in that sort of order. I was forever rooting for the robots and the animal beings. I love these guys. Quite liked Han Solo. Ended up being a much sturdier character than I expected. Luke was not my favourite though, and I really don't have much to say about Princess Leia. I don't really care about her, to be honest. So moving on to the last movie that I watched, which was Disney Descendants: The Rise of Red, which I gave a 2 out of 5 stars. And yeah, these movies have definitely had their time, unfortunately. I loved the lovely tribute to Cameron Boyce at the start, and we had some excellent singing talent from Rita Ora and Brandy, who I loved her version of Cinderella back in the day when I was a kid. I loved it. And I think the Prince Charming character was actually the same actor as well, if I remember correctly, so that was really wholesome. I really enjoyed that moment. But the story was underwhelming in itself, especially the execution. I was just like, oh, is that it? And although I was singing along, it'd be rude not to when I had the sing-along version right there and the words were on the screen, the songs just didn't hit like the original soundtrack did. Don't get me wrong, there were a couple of songs that I did like, mainly the villain ones, I think, and also the song that the characters Chloe and Red sang together. Like, they're sort of like deciding, shall we work together, shall we not? That song, I can't remember what it's called. But even those were pretty lackluster in the grand scheme of things. And yeah, it just was, I kind of like, about it. I hope they don't make any more of these movies, because the original first one, to be honest, was fantastic. Yeah, and it was definitely having its time by the third one, so no more please. Guys, that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you've been watching over the last couple of months, and as usual, thank you so much for watching, and I shall catch you in another video soon. Bye.